You're watching the Fantasy Football Bros podcast, the show that'll keep you from coming in last. Now, here's your hosts.
Hi, how are you? Welcome to Fantasy Football Bros podcast. I'm your host, Jimmy Romero, and I am joined here by Nick Romero in the middle and JD Bowen on our very left.
You forgot his last name, huh, Jimmy?
No, I didn't know if I was going to say his full last name, his full name. But I'm like, wait, I guess I said it, so yeah. I know his last name. All right, so today we're going to kind of give an overview of the NFC South and the NFC North. But before we do that, gentlemen, I wanted to kind of get a feeling on your fantasy journey a little bit and kind of give people a little peek behind the curtain. So what player screwed you over in your league that you would never touch with a 10-foot pole and want him anywhere near your team? So, yeah. So, how about Nick? You start us off.
Okay. Hey. Coming, peeking my curtain. I just thought that was a great little thing to say.
Like the Wizard of Oz little reference right there.
Yeah, dude. So I think for me, it's kind of an obvious person. I had him for like 2 years, and he did like the same exact thing each year. But for me, it was Sammy Watkins. Sammy Watkins is notorious for having a amazing first game and just being absolute crap the whole rest of the season. I remember I had him the first year I had him on my bench, and he scored like 48 points. It was like a record or something. Like he had like 4 touchdowns, like 100-something yards. I can't remember. And then I ended up like, I can't bench this guy. He's got Patty Mahomes on his team. Like he's like the sure-handed one. This is before like Tyreek really went off. And he was just a deep threat. And I was like, I got to start him. So I started him like the next 5 times and just ended up just giving me absolutely nothing. I had him the same exact thing next year. Did the same exact thing. It was horrible. Never draft Sammy Watkins again.
All right. Good. JD, you want to take the next one?
Yeah. So I would probably, for me personally, I have one from each year. If I had to go for my first year, it would be. It's kind of hard to say. Josh Jacobs did really bad for me last year. He did good at times, but he was so inconsistent. And I remember sweating out if he would get, I think it was 8 points, if he would just get 8 points on 25 rushing attempts. And at that point, I'm like, you know what? If you're going to get 25 touches and you're not even going to break 8 points, I just don't want you on my team anymore. And so that is probably my number one. My number two would be Michael Thomas as well. Unfortunately, just all the injuries are starting to catch up to him. He's injured again already. I gave up my first round last year for him, and I luckily made a great trade to salvage that type of a pick.
Very great trade.
For anyone who doesn't know, I traded him for Jonathan Taylor to Jimmy, and
in our keeper league.
So I get to keep Jonathan Taylor in the third round, and he gets to basically get screwed by Michael Thomas the entire season, like how I felt through the first 8 weeks or whatever it was.
There we go. Not bitter. I'm not bitter at all. The guy,
that's Jimmy's least favorite fantasy player too.
Michael Thomas, yeah, definitely.
Visibly just angry.
Yeah,
love it.
So definitely one guy that I will never have. Probably. See, now I'm like kind of like a little bit like, wait, do I want him? Because that's how much of an abusive relationship I am. It's like Stockholm syndrome. Because he was on my team the whole year. But DJ Moore, great receiver, great talent, young. The guy failed me. Like anytime I'd start him, he'd have his bad games. Anytime I benched him, he'd have his good games. You know. So like even in the championship game, like I started him because I'm like I'm gonna start him in front of like Juju, and Juju got like 25 points. DJ Moore got like 9 or 10 in half PPR. So like I just don't want to touch him. But that's not telling you guys not to. Like I think he's a good pick. I got him in like the 5th round, and I think that's where he's going this year. And I think he'll be all right. But we'll probably talk about that later. But yeah. DJ Moore, he screwed me, so I don't want him. I'm gonna keep away, from him. But yeah. So as we transition to the next topic, let's talk about the AFC South first. Okay, let's work bottom up. So, JD, how about you start us off with the Falcons?
All right.
Raven.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you for that intro into the Falcons. The Falcons are an interesting team. 1 year they'll do really well. They'll make somehow a run in either playoffs or even, as we saw a couple years ago, to the Super Bowl. And then the next year they'll have a losing record. And they're consistently. I remember watching them back in like 2015. It was like 2015 they'd win, 2016 they'd lose, 2017 they'd win, 2018 they'd lose. Like losing record, winning record. I kind of have them a little bit higher than probably most people might. I think Matt Ryan is going to show what he has left in the tank this year to make sure that they don't really go with someone else quite yet, being that their backup is A.J. McCarron. I don't see A.J. taking over Matt Ryan's position.
Who's that?
Has been relevant since his Alabama days. And then they picked up Mike Davis. Mike Davis is a interesting pick for a running back. As a lot of people might remember, last year he took over for McCaffrey and carried. Yeah, he probably won me because I was lucky enough to get him off waivers that last year, and he carried me through a couple wins last season. And now that he's been given that full-time starter position, where as long as he can stay healthy, he's their starter for now, he would be an interesting pickup to get. If not, at the very least, to be able to keep him, see how he does. Because he's not going to be one of the top running backs picked, but he's still someone who might get you that type of numbers of a first or second running back type number if he has a good week or so. And Matt Ryan does favor his running backs out of the passing game at times too. So you could see a couple HB screens to him. We'll see. Interesting. Kyle Pitts is probably someone I would pick up personally. I think he's going to go lower. I think he's going to go lower than he will. Than he probably deserves.
He's going like fifth,
and if you're
sixth
playing
round
a keeper,
right now, just like in Yahoo. So.
Yeah,
and it'll be interesting.
Pretty high though.
That is super high and especially for a rookie. But he just has everything you look for in a tight end. I don't know about his blocking game as much, but passing game, I mean, you can't ask for a better tight end skill wise. When it comes to the tight end position. Calvin Ridley, he's going to be the biggest question mark for me on this team. At wide receiver, he's always been a wide receiver too, and so it'll be interesting now that Julio Jones is gone. It'll be interesting to see how he forms a stronger passing game with Matt Ryan, if they're able to connect more or what goes on. Calvin Ridley was a really great wide receiver too. I mean, he was almost a consistent 12-point in a half PPR league last year. Besides maybe like a couple games, but he's a consistent wide receiver, but he's never had the number one cornerback on him throughout every game. And so it'll be interesting to see how he does in a 17 game season this year.
Yeah, I'll chime in here because I think that Calvin Ridley is going to be a force to be reckoned with. He's going, I think, in second round. There is concern, so I agree with that there. But I think that anyone should pick him and will be wise to pick him because of targets. It's going to be him and Pitts leading the way. So I just think it's just a safe, good pick for Calvin Ridley. But Nick, do you have any comments on the Falcons?
Yeah, I mean, you actually, I was about to say that same exact thing that you said. I kind of tend to disagree with JD on a lot of things, just like to be his contrarian. Yeah, but I definitely disagree. I think Calvin Ridley. I agree with what JD was saying that he's never had the number one corner on him, and there is some concerns. But you look at last year when Julio was out and Calvin was in. Calvin was just getting fed. Calvin was putting up big numbers, and he's someone that was a number two, does have question marks, but I think he's going to be that person where he makes another step forward and is going to be that guy. So, but in terms of what JD said too, I definitely agree with Kyle Pitts. He's definitely an exciting player. He's going to be probably one of the kind of bust in with the three top tight ends with Waller, Kelsey, and Kittle. Definitely, he's going to have a lot of people interested in what he can do on the field, and I'm excited to see what he can do. Probably not the best pass blocker, or run
This is
blocker, but
fantasy,
he's going to
baby.
be.
Who cares about that?
Yeah, exactly.
We don't want him blocking.
Long,
We want him running routes.
as long as he lines up as a wide receiver, I love it. And Matt Ryan. I mean, Matt Ryan, in terms of whether you should maybe consider him late rounds or maybe even a streamer. I don't think so. I mean, Matt Ryan historically has not been good without Julio Jones, and obviously with Julio Jones not even on the team, I don't think he's going to be any good. I think this is definitely his make or break year. But I even think like last year they were considering drafting a quarterback in the draft,
Yeah.
so I think they're already kind of turned their back on him a little bit. But I still think that if you win and if he has good games, then he's definitely going to be that person for them. But I just don't see it happening without Julio. Obviously, too, with the running backs, definitely would agree with what JD says. Mike Davis is going to be the guy, but keep an eye out for Javian Hawkins, someone that they really like out of Louisville. He's an undrafted free agent. Definitely someone that you don't need a draft in any league, but definitely keep an eye out for him. He should be stealing some snaps from Mike Davis, and eventually, if Mike Davis gets hurt, it's taking over altogether.
Yeah, so that's just something to be an eye out for. Mike Davis, I think he's just a great running back. I need to bring up my boy, Koo. Okay, it's a kicker. That guy, amazing kicker. Okay, like kickers, you pick him late round, but Koo is probably the number one kicker off the board. So he's just a machine. So so he's money. Yeah. So keep an eye on him. Matt Ryan, I wouldn't have him. Maybe stream him. But, if you don't want to be a street quarterback streamer, I like to stream. Well, during the season, we'll help you guys with quarterbacks to stream of the week, depending on the matchup. And he might make a couple weeks. We'll see how he does. Because, he lost.
Not for me.
He lost Julio. Yeah, right? He lost Julio, but now he does have Kyle Pitts. So we'll see if he could and kind of help him a little bit. He's when's the last time a tight end's been picked this early? I think it's in the 70s, I heard, something like that. So this guy's supposed to be a generational talent. So Pitts, he's a good guy to have, he's so... And Calvin Ridley, like I said earlier, yeah. So we covered them, but so this next team that we're gonna
real quick.
Go ahead.
Real quick. I also think it's worth mentioning Russell Gage as being maybe the
that's a good point.
third guy.
That's a good point.
Russell Gage is going in I think 9th, 10th rounds in a lot of leagues. He's definitely going to be taking a step forward this year as well. Expect him to be their number 2 guy and get some touches as well.
Yeah, so the next team I want to talk about. So, JD, can you show your shirt for a second? JD, he's a Trojan fan, okay? And so this next team, the Panthers, so Nick and JD were talking about how they argue. This is one of the guys they will probably be arguing about is Sam Darnold from the Panthers. So JD started us off with this one. I'll start us off with this one. So the Panthers are going to be a good fantasy team, okay? McCaffrey is just going to be a machine. I think no matter who's his quarterback, I think Sam Darnold's more talented than Teddy Bridgewater, personally. I don't think he had any weapon whatsoever on the Jets. I think this will be a good year for him. I don't know about their offensive line, but I know that if he's in trouble, he can be like, McCaffrey, and just hurl it to him. So it's just and there's good receivers to keep an eye on. Robbie Anderson. That's a guy who was getting fed a lot of targets. Nobody wanted to seem to take him off the waiver wire because he's not going to do that good. Week, he do good. He's not going to do that good. He do good again. So that's a guy to have on your team. He's a good flex probably option. Wide receiver 2 flex, And DJ Moore, he's another flex wide receiver 2 option in my opinion. Like I said earlier, I'm probably not drafting him. But I think Sam Darnold is a possible guy to draft. I think he is stream, he's your second quarterback for me. I think this is a make or break year. We talk a lot about that. We talked about it last episode. We talked about this episode. Make or break years. Sam Darnold, this is a make or break year this year for sure because they're gonna have to decide what their future is. So yeah, that's kind of what I have to cover about the Panthers. You guys chime in. What do you guys have to say about that?
I'll go first because I want to get my point in before Nick rebuttals me. This is a team I'm actually very, very interested in. So, like we've been saying, this is a make it or break it year for Sam Darnold. He hasn't quite had the opportunity with the Jets as most quarterbacks usually end up getting. He really didn't have a true number 1 wide receiver on that, especially this last year. His only number 1 wide receiver was Robbie Anderson when he was on the Jets. I'll go over that in a bit, but with Sam Darnold, he didn't have the line at the Jets too. And then even last year when they tried drafting a little bit more of offensive line, everyone was injured on that line, and they were starting like sixth rounders. It was just not a pretty sight to watch him on the Jets. And you would still see him be able to scramble, shake a couple tackles, and throw some unbelievable throws. Now I am probably a little biased on that because I'm a USC fan, but I mean you can watch if you type in Sam Darnold highlights, every single one is him literally breaking a tackle, shaking it, and throwing it 30 yards down the field on the dot. I mean, the guy, as far as raw arm talent, you watch the Penn State USC game in the Rose Bowl, he steps up in the pocket and throws a precise ball in between three Penn State defenders, and it's just on the money anywhere else, and that's not caught.
And he's got legs,
and so
too.
He has
legs too.
And he has the legs. He's not necessarily a mobile quarterback, but he's someone who can move a little bit in the pocket.
Yeah.
Which is what you look for. That's enough talking about someone who's probably not going to be drafted in many leagues.
That was JD's SC plug.
So with that being said, he's probably still number one in everyone's fantasy league, Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah.
There's not much that can be said that hasn't already been said about this guy. Just one of those type of generational running back talents in general, though. Even watching him back when he was at Stanford, you knew this guy was going to be good, and he still exceeded expectations. This guy is so great. The one guy I would talk about, like Jimmy said, Robbie Anderson, and I think he's going to have an even better year because he already has that connection with Sam Darnold from when they were both on the Jets for a couple of years. And so I think both of them are going to feel a lot more comfortable having already played with each other, which I think is going to help with the passing game. The line is a lot better on the Carolina Panthers than it is on the Jets. And even when Robbie Anderson was playing on the Jets, he still had some good games. So I think that's someone who will play really well now that it's his second year with Carolina, but it's his third year, I believe, with Sam Darnold. And I think they're going to have that type of connection. And Darnold, that's going to be Darnold's go-to guy. He already has that kind of relationship with him. DJ Moore scares me. He can be good. He can be average. Like Jimmy said, he's someone I would probably not pick personally either, just simply because he is the second wide receiver on the team, and Darnold already has that relationship with Anderson. But DJ Moore's still really good. I'm not saying don't take him.
Yeah.
I just personally am going to shy away from taking him. And that's kind of you're not going to look at their tight end. I mean, I think it's Dan Arnold or something like that. You can look at him potentially, but I don't think he's going to be that great as far as tight ends come.
Yeah. Nick, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, just to chime in, a little bit of context between JD and I's relationship. We were one time at a draft house. And we just got finished with our draft, and we were discussing players and dumb conversation. And one of that kind of pulled from that dumb conversation was, I was bringing up a debate my dad and I had about Darnold being, obviously we're Rams fans, so he goes, if Darnold was on the Rams, they'd be better without Goff. And JD just hopped into that discussion with with what my dad and I were arguing about. So definitely still, stay strong in that. Darnold would not be good on the Rams. JD.
Wow.
The question was, would he be better than Goff?
But also it was arguing picking poisons, right? They're both not good. So, but anyway, enough with crappy quarterbacks. I still think Darnold was great in college. It just hasn't translated into the NFL. And I think you can argue that every quarterback is good and has this highlight tape, but I don't think he's going to be a consistent good quarterback that anyone in fantasy. So I won't even, touch on that. And I know JD probably agrees with that. So, but I mean, in terms of back with what JD said, running back, I mean, McCaffrey's, he's a god. I mean, the guy was a cheat code in fantasy. It's like not fair. I remember like first year I came in second to someone who had Lamar Jackson and McCaffrey. It just wasn't fair. Like those two
off. Both of them broke records.
Oh yeah.
Both of them broke records.
It was just
it's like funny that guy.
And this guy had them both on his on his team, and it was just like no one was going to beat that. So, I also agree with a lot of what you guys said. I think Robbie Anderson definitely going to be someone that you could pick and make an argument for, and obviously with DJ Moore being inconsistent is the best word I can think for him. He definitely was one of those people that they were excited about, Carolina Panthers, but hasn't been, I don't think, what they hoped he would be. So I don't think there's much there.
He's had like 1,000 receiving yards though 2 years in a row, so it's a rookie year and this year I believe it's his second 2 years he's been in. This is his third. I don't know. It could be more. Get it? But yeah. So I think that we covered Carolina pretty well. So I think So the next team we're going to talk about, and Nick's going to lead us off, is the Saints. This is an interesting team though, so Nick can lead us off.
Oh yeah.
A Drew Breeless Saints. Nick, what do you have to say about them?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. What a weird team. I mean, Sean Payton just likes throwing curveballs on us. I mean, we think that Jameis Winston's going to be their guy. Then last year he starts, everyone's favorite.
Hill.
Yeah, Taysom Hill, who's just actually was great. And I think he was also broken in some ESPN leagues where you were able to start him at tight end, which I don't know how that happened, but that was just not fair. Good for you if you had him on your ESPN league, but I mean, they're just kind of an enigma, I think, the Saints. I mean, and then also they also just signed Devontae Freeman.
What the heck is that? That
was kind of concerning if you're a big Alvin Kamara fan or fantasy owner in the keeper league. I mean, what does that mean? You have Murray and Kamara and Devontae Freeman.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a weird thing. I don't think he's gonna even see the field very often, but still, it's something that you kind of raise your eyebrow when you see. I mean, Kamara doesn't run the ball as like all the time. He's not like their bell cow, but he does catch the ball. That's where your bread and butter is with him. So I definitely think you still keep Alvin Kamara, but I mean, definitely something, question mark on him is why did they sign this running back? And, who knows? And also, if just Taysom Hill's going to be the quarterback, I don't know if I want Alvin Kamara. I think his draft capital drops a little bit, honestly, because when Taysom Hill was the quarterback for those 2 weeks 3 weeks that Breeze was out, he just wasn't good. He just wasn't good. So
he was irrelevant.
I honestly will take people over him. I would even take Saquon maybe over him. That's just my personal opinion, just because if Taysom Hill's the quarterback, then you just got to be worried. And for some reason, Sean Payton has this love affection for Taysom Hill. We won't get into. I know he has something over him. I don't know. And then wide receivers, I mean, it's pretty much wide open for wide receivers. I mean, Michael Thomas is hurt.
He's gone for the first 6 weeks.
He's gone.
At least,
so,
right?
Yeah, so I mean, it's pretty much wide open for them, for those wide receivers in that group. I think also with tight end, I don't even know who's their tight end anymore.
Trout. Yeah, because they lost Jared Cook. I mean, Jared Cook somewhere else.
They had Jared Cook, who a lot of people.
Adam Troutman.
Yeah, Adam
Troutman. Yeah. So it's like, it's really a weird situation. That's why I say that the Saints are kind of an enigma that I'm not really sure what I'm getting. If Jameis Winston's the starting quarterback, then I want that, because he throws those interceptions and he throws those touchdown passes. So
he was the number one.
Mostly
he was a high quarterback. He's like number 2 quarterback, wasn't he, a couple of years ago?
Yeah. Yep. It was Mariota, and then I think it was him, or actually I think it may have been vice versa. I can't remember. Someone have to fact check me on that. Oh, in fantasy. Oh, yeah. He was up there. So, but it just really depends on who's starting. I mean, I think you want someone if Jameis Winston's starting, but if Taysom Hill's starting, you don't want any part of it.
Kamara will do well if Jameis Winston's starting. So we'll know more as camp progresses right now. So So JD, what are your thoughts on the Saints?
Yeah, so I mean, I probably agree with most of what Nick's kind of saying. I mean, it's just a huge cluster F of no one knows what the hell is going on over there. They pick up Devontae Freeman, and a reason that there's no reason to pick him up. except for to hurt Alvin Kamara owners.
Just to hurt us.
Yeah, I mean, it makes no sense to me. I mean, if anything, they should have picked up a different position maybe, but I mean, if you have the opportunity, I guess he used to be a all-star running back or a Pro Bowl, I should say, Pro Bowl running back. So he's good. He one thing that I'm sure a lot of people remember, he used to catch. It was like 60 balls out of the backfield every year for the Falcons, a couple seasons at least. But I think consistently, like 3 or 4 seasons, he had catches of 70 plus, 60 plus. And that's kind of where Alvin Kamara gets a lot of his points. Is he doesn't run, he runs the ball, but I mean he shares that backfield when it's running with Latavius Murray. Where Alvin gets his points is through catching, and it worries me that they picked up a second out of the backfield running back that catches. I mean, Michael Thomas, I already said about it earlier in this episode. I'm going to stay away from him. He's great if he can stay healthy, but he hasn't been able to stay healthy. And when he finally gets back on the field, he's injured that same game and misses the next couple weeks.
Yeah, has he even been healthy? Like for almost like a year, it seems like he hasn't been healthy.
Yeah, he played like 1 or 2 games last season and got injured again. So it's just you got to stay away from him. One thing I will say, and I do agree with it, Jameis Winston is one of those people you look for in this type of elite if you play fantasy, because interceptions aren't worth as much as touchdowns. And so touchdowns, he's going to get you 4 touchdowns, but he's going to throw 4 interceptions. But I mean, that's a +8 at least, depending on what type of league you play in. That's probably like a +8 right there alone. Plus, he was averaging 350, 400 yards throwing every game. It will be interesting because he was doing that on a team where he was constantly down by 10 or 20, and so they're throwing the ball constantly. So it will be interesting to see. Yeah, I mean, he did throw a 6 probably. But
yeah,
Godwin was a top receiver when he was Godwin was a top receiver. So yeah.
Yeah, we'll touch on that in just a second here with probably our next team, I think. Yeah. But I mean that's kind of my opinion. If you can get a Jameis and Jameis is going to be their clear-cut starter, it's worth it. If he's going to share with Taysom Hill, it's not worth it.
Yeah. We didn't really touch too much on the receivers. What I'd say about the receivers, like besides Michael Thomas, like I think it's Traquan Smith and Emmanuel Sanders. He's still there. So
no, Emmanuel Sanders I think is on the Bills.
Okay,
Deontay Harris.
Okay, so those guys are maybe worth drafting if because Jameis Winston is good for wide receivers. Godwin was the top wide receiver. I want to say like he might have been top 5, might have been in the top 3 honestly a couple of years ago because Jameis Winston's his quarterback. They're just throwing and they're playing behind after the interceptions, all the pick sixes. But yeah, so that's something to look out for. Saints defense, there'll be a strong defensive pick. Their kicker, it's Lutz, right? It's Lutz. He'll be
Will Lutz.
Will Lutz. He'll be good as always. They're in that dome half the time, so you get safe kicker. So you pick him, get him. So the next team I wanted us to cover, and JD can start us off with them, are the Super Bowl.
But let me
go ahead
before we move on too much, Jimmy. Do you think the Saints are going to be actually a competitive team?
No,
because I don't think they will be.
No. If you're talking about a team basis,
I don't think that they will be.
It depends on who they go at QB and if he can kind of step it up. I mean, we saw, who was it? Teddy Bridgewater just a couple seasons ago was basically able to resurrect his career when Drew Brees went out, he resurrected his career in the 4 or 5 games, 6 games that Brees was out. So if Jameis Winston can have that type of a turnaround, this team can be, with the defense they kind of sometimes can have, if they decide to show up some days, because some days it felt like last year they may not have played as well. But with a defense like them and with the offensive weapons they have, and then Alvin Kamara, if Michael Thomas can come back healthy after a couple weeks into the season, they're a team that the second half of the season, I can see them winning games that they may not have otherwise and being in that playoff position, especially I think they expanded the playoffs too a little bit. I don't know if it's still expanded, but if they can get in, that's a team that's as dangerous as any other team if they can stay healthy.
Yeah, I disagree. I just think that the only weapon they really have is Alvin Kamara. Everything else is like
Their defense
Michael
is good.
Thomas. Their defense is good, and I guess their kicker is good. But I mean, if the offense isn't good, I don't care how good your kicker is. You know, they're not scoring me fantasy points. But I just think really we can only name Alvin Kamara and Michael Thomas. And if Michael Thomas is out for longer periods of time, which I think they said that he was supposed to be out with 6 weeks, someone can fact check me on that.
And then they have a bye, so
I
he
mean,
won't be back, I think, till week 8. Because I think they have like a bye.
yeah.
At the
So
early.
they have really no receivers that are going to threaten them. I guess use Traquan Smith. I think what's his name,
Deontay
right?
Harris, yeah, Traquan Smith and Deontay Harris, though, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I those don't scare me, and those don't
Good
excite me
flex
from a
options,
fantasy.
though. They're
owner,
good
so.
guys to maybe have in your
Good
bench
flex options, but I mean,
in fantasy.
it all depends, like we said. So I don't really expect them to be competitive this year. So I'm a little bit nervous if I'm a Kamara owner.
Yeah. All right. Well, now we're gonna talk about the Super Bowl champions, the Tom Brady and the Buccaneers. So it's like a band name, no? But JD, you want to talk about the Buccaneers for us?
I mean, it's consistently every single year. I think this is going to be Tom Brady's last season of being dominant, and then he wins another Super Bowl. And
Just
so
don't say anything, dude.
it's just the guy is defying logic. I mean, he's turning 44 this year, and you have coaches that are not even that old. Like head coaches of NFL teams aren't even that old. So he's defying the ability to be able to play that old. I mean, you saw, I think it was like 38 or 39 when all of a sudden you had this huge dip from Peyton Manning, where one season he looked like that surgery for his neck like resurrected his career, and then the season after that it's like the guy's throwing ducks out there, like throwing up balls and praying someone's going to come down with it on his team. But Tom Brady hasn't shown any sign of really stopping. I still hesitate on it, but I mean, we'll see how he does. It's going to be interesting running back debate, but I wouldn't touch either of the running backs when there's no clear cut number one, and every single week they kind of go with just the hot hand and not necessarily just whoever. So between Leonard Fournette and Ronald Jones Jr. or Ronald Jones II, it's kind of just like the hot hand, and so I wouldn't touch any of them unless you get them late in the
No debate
one of the
for me.
rounds. And I mean, the thing is, Leonard Fournette basically has never been able to stay fully healthy. You go back to his LSU days; he couldn't stay healthy at LSU. So you might want to look at maybe picking up Ronald Jones for a couple of weeks, because when Leonard Fournette wasn't there, Ronald Jones would get 14, 15 points. That's a good flex option potentially. Wide receivers, I mean, Mike Evans is the consistent inconsistency, but still an amazing wide receiver. I think he had 13 or 14 touchdown catches last season. Probably one of the highest touchdown rates of any wide receiver last season was Mike Evans. He still only caught, I want to say, somewhere in the 60s for receptions throughout the season. But at the same point, Chris Godwin was out for 4 games too, and so it really put a lot more pressure on Mike Evans to be able to step up in those games. Chris Godwin's someone you're going to want to look at. We talked about him earlier. Chris Godwin is really good. He actually is really good. We talked about it our last episode, but they are giving the Rams a run for best 1-2 punch for wide receivers. I mean, Chris Godwin, you can't go wrong with drafting, and he still had almost 70 catches, and he was out for 4 or 5 games last season. So his production's probably only going to go up. Antonio Brown's on the team. I would stay away from him, but he's always a good threat. I mean, he's always someone you could put on your bench, see if the matchup's favorable, and go for him. Rob Gronk, I think, is probably going to be their clear number 1 tight end this season, although we'll see. But there was a couple seasons last year where he played really well, and he played great in the Super Bowl this year. And so their whole team, top to bottom, is just offensive loaded. And I don't think you can necessarily go wrong with any of them. I would just shy away from probably the running back committee, unless you want to go for Ronald Jones, like I said, and hope that Leonard Fournette just can't stay healthy this season again.
I'm gonna just chime in here. I have a hot take about the Bucks. Okay.
Oh, I do. I think I
The
do
Bucks
too. That's
team-
funny.
The Bucks to me have no one I
Yes,
would
exactly. That's funny.
draft. Let me tell you why.
Yeah, I wouldn't draft anyone because
look at their depth on each position, or at least each position that is fantasy relevant. Tight end, they have Rob Gronkowski, OJ Howard, both very good tight ends. Wide receivers, they have Chris Godwin, they have Mike Evans, have Antonio Brown. That's too much depth for me. I don't want to draft someone.
Too as well.
Yeah, running back. I mean, I was getting there, Jimmy, but thanks, dude. But running backs. I mean, same thing. It's like I don't want to waste a draft pick on, or at least a high draft pick on something I don't know what I'm going to get. I want to, for sure, I'm going to start you every week. You're going to get me this amount of points and maybe a little bit more. With the Bucks offense, all those guys have the potential of getting 40 points. And if someone's getting 40 points, then the other person's probably getting around 8 points.
Yeah.
Okay? So I don't want to touch anyone on that team. That's my hot take. Jimmy, what say you?
I wholeheartedly agree, except for one thing. I believe Mike Evans and Chris Godwin are going pretty close in mock drafts. They're going probably like 4th round, 3rd round. I think that's where they're going. Way too early for me. Antonio Brown is going way late. And he could possibly be right on their tail. I think his draft value is so much better than pretty much everyone else on that team. It's like what it reminds me of. So I agree wholeheartedly because there's so many guys on that team. It's like you don't know who's going to be the guy to take. You know, it's like there's clear cut for me. Like so that's my disagreement. There is like the Rams. It's definitely Cooper Kupp, Woods. Those are receivers, and they're both going to be solid. For me, Evans and Godwin were a little shaky. But they do have the GOAT. They do have that at their side. But for me, I'd take Antonio Brown. I don't want to draft them just because of where they're going. Because that's like what I'm talking about. Draft capital. Where I'm getting them is just too early for them to go. I just don't want to. Yep. I don't want to pick them. I'd rather go Antonio Brown. Have him on my bench as a flex. He has a lot of upside. He did really well in the playoffs. And he's just a good option. You know, it's like what they say in the Incredibles movie. If everyone's super, no one is. If everyone's getting fed, no one is. Because there's just too much happening. Yep. But I think we didn't touch on the GOAT too much. I think he's probably the best option to like if you're going later round quarterback. He's a good one. I think he's probably like the 8th best quarterback going. He's a good option because he has all those weapons. You know, he doesn't have a. And go ahead.
Last year he was playing on a torn MCL.
Yeah.
Like we forgot to say that. Yeah. He was playing on MCL. He's had this whole year get acclimated with their playbook. He was played on a torn MCL. If I'm getting any one of the Bucks, it's Tom Brady. I agree with you on that.
So one thing I'll bring up then, he had 40 touchdowns last year, 4-0 through the regular season. At that, I would agree typically with what Jimmy's saying that if everyone's super, no one's super. But when your entire team is filled with superheroes of that caliber and they're still getting 40 touchdowns from Tom Brady on a MCL, you can take a chance on a Mike Evans or a Godwin. I don't think it's going to turn out bad for you. I do agree. There's probably maybe better value in those areas that might be a little bit more consistent. But Mike Evans still had 1,000 yards catching or 1,000 yards receiving last year, and still had 70 catches, 14 touchdowns. You saw the second half of last year. Rob Gronk became who he used to be.
And we don't have many good ones.
And to that point, I mean, OJ Howard's injured. He's nursing an ankle injury right now. So with all of that being said, I would favor probably Mike Evans and Gronk, but at the same point, like you both said, I think you can probably both find better values where they're probably being drafted and a little bit more consistency.
It's like they're going really high.
Let me clarify before we move on here. I don't think that the Bucks, I don't want like any of them. I'm saying more so I don't want any of them in a important like actual draft slot. If I'm in the high rounds, I don't want to draft them because I don't know what I'm getting into.
Yeah. All right, so I think we covered them pretty well. Just be wary when you draft a Buck. They could be amazing.
Yeah.
They could get you 30 points and then get you 8 points.
And that offensive line's not that good.
And their running backs don't catch the ball too. So think about that. They don't catch. They drop the ball a lot. So, anyways, we're gonna move on to the NFC North. And we're gonna start with the Bears. Who wants to grab the Bears right now?
Well, first, do we want to talk about maybe someone we might want to keep from the NFC South, or do we want to just?
I think it's a good idea.
That's a good
It's a
idea.
good
I
idea.
like that idea.
Who
What,
who would we want that we think is from that league that's kind of a little bit underrated? That's a good question. I mean, I think for me, Antonio Brown. I know I said we didn't want anything to do with them in the high rounds, but Antonio Brown has a full year with being, well, I guess a year and a half with being with Tampa Bay. Tom was an advocate for them to sign him, and even to the point where he was living with him at one point. I think that connection is only going to get stronger. And like what Jimmy said, his value is he's late.
he's going
in late
no
rounds.
one's even thinking
everywhere.
about him. No one's thinking about him.
So if you have an opportunity, I think Antonio Brown's going to be a steal.
Yeah.
I would actually agree with that. For sake of not necessarily pointing out just one clear guy, even though I'm not the biggest Antonio Brown fan, I think he's bang for your buck. He can get you the most points out of that type of draft he's getting all that. But I can't talk enough about Kyle Pitts. The guy is just his size, his athleticism, everything you look for in a tight end besides blocking. The one thing I was going to say to counter you guys, blocking tight ends are valuable because it makes them a three down tight end in a way. They play even when it's a clear running down usually, and then they do a play action pass, he can still be in there. That's the one worry, is that he's going to be in only on clear passing plays potentially, unless if he gets a little bit bulkier and can block a little bit better. But man, I mean, the size, the speed, the hands, everything about Kyle Pitts, there's a reason he was like so high as a tight end.
Yeah, the guy I'm going to go with, since I was going to go with Pitts, but this one's just as good to me, is Mike Davis. He's going low in drafts. People are forgetting about him. He was such an amazing running back at like the most of last year. Ask JD, he had him most of the year. You know, when McCaffrey went down, he was leading that backfield and he was getting a lot of points.
Consistent 20 points. Consistent 20 points for a couple games.
When I'm talking about like the value you're gonna get out of this guy because he's going late. He can end up being your RB1 and you get him in like the 6th round. You know, it's like that's insane. You know, so that's who I'd like want. That's who I have my eye on in that league.
Yeah, I think a lot of people overlook him because he doesn't excite anyone.
He's not.
You know, he's just
not
like
sexy. Pick,
he's just a
right?
consistent guy. He's not that sexy pick. So I think that's a lot of reason why.
Okay, so let's go to the NFC North. Thanks, JD, for reminding us not to skip that part of the segment. But we're gonna go to the NFC North now, and we're gonna talk about the Bears. I'll start us off with the Bears. I believe they said Chase Fields is not going to be the Week 1 starter. If you guys can correct me if I'm wrong.
Justin
Fields.
Yeah, sorry. I was thinking Jamar Chase. I don't know. I'm just trying to make an excuse for myself for that mess up. But no. But Justin Fields, Ohio State Buckeye quarterback. Okay, so I'm going to make up for it by giving a little fact about him. I know who I'm talking about. But he's a guy to keep an eye on. I think he's a guy to put on your bench because he's a running quarterback, and I think. Out of all the quarterbacks that are drafted, he is on the best team because the Bears traded up for that pick. They weren't picking there in the draft. They traded up and got him. All the other teams got lower teams that got him. So that's who I'd keep an eye on for sure as a bench guy. Allen Robinson scares me because of a rookie quarterback, because of Justin Fields too. So, but he's got such good hands, and he's never had a good quarterback. So, like, if he hasn't done good with Mitch Trubisky, if he's done good, with Mitch Trubisky, I think he'll do good with Justin Fields. That's what I'd hope. We got also David Montgomery there. David Montgomery is someone I draft high. I think he's going in, 3rd round in most leagues. Now, there's something to be wary of is when he went off at the end of last year, we can't forget that he was against teams that were good matchups for him. He went off, but they were against teams he was supposed to go off against. Other games, he wasn't that good. But he's supposed to be their 3-down back. So anytime a guy is supposed to be their 3-down back, I'm gonna draft him. I'll tell anyone draft him because running backs are scarce. There's not that many that you can just grab. So yeah, so Montgomery's good. I think what do you guys? I don't know how to pronounce the tight end's name. It's Komet. I think it's K. Komet.
Yeah.
Tight end.
Komet.
Yeah. Do they have Jimmy Grandpa anymore? Jimmy Graham.
They have Jimmy Graham still. Yeah, he's still
their options.
On his 80th season.
But I think it's Cole Komet. Cole Komet's someone to watch as a tight end because there's not many of them, and I think it's all about targets. That's what you need to watch for, and he gets a lot of targets. So
the other wide receivers is it Miller, and then there's
Darnell
Mooney. I think they got rid of Miller. I think Anthony Miller just got traded, if I'm not wrong. But see, Darnell Mooney, he's an option. But I just don't with a rookie quarterback. I'd only go with Allen Robinson. That's the only one I suggest drafting. Maybe they're tight ends because tight ends are scarce. Montgomery I'd take early because he's a workhorse running back. And yeah, so it'd be an interesting team to see with that quarterback. So what do you guys have to say?
It's also all they have. He's also Montgomery's all they have. That was the good thing about having Montgomery last year is just he wasn't the first 8 games of the season. He was not good, but he was all they had.
Wait, what about Tariq Cohen this year? Is he gone?
Oh, that's right.
He's
he's coming back. Yeah,
Tariq Cohen.
He's coming back from.
We'll see.
He's gonna definitely cut in time with David Montgomery, but it is Tyreek Cohen actually.
Yeah, it is.
All these names are getting jumbled in our head.
I know, right? He's going to be taking some snaps from Montgomery because he's their receiving weapon from the backfield. So I think that's something to consider when you're drafting Montgomery. I don't think I'm with you on that where I draft Montgomery that high because, like you said, the strength of schedule wasn't. That's why he was having so much success. He played the Jacksonville Jaguars. He played the Houston Texans. It was just fantasy. If you're on the playoffs, that was a fantasy dream come true for you. But I mean, just to touch base what Jimmy says, I think that Justin Fields is going to be a fantasy. Just a stud this year. I think he's going to be like what JD says, young guy that can run. He was, I know there's some, people aren't sure whether he can throw or not. I definitely see that side of it, but I think that Allen Robinson's going to eat this year. He's going to look to his veteran receiver to just throw it up and hope that he catches it. And Allen Robinson is that talented where he will. So I think that Allen Robinson's for sure someone that you get. I think Darnell Mooney, don't sleep on him. Darnell Mooney, he's got some speed. He's going to take a step forward again this year. So I think if you're late rounds, keep an eye. I would draft Darnell Mooney.
Good, nice.
So the couple things I'll say, the Bears are, besides Montgomery, a team I would probably stay away from as well. That being, they have 3 qualified QBs to start, and they don't know who's starting when. And you can look it up, and every single week they're trying to compare Nick Foles to Andy Dalton to Justin Fields. They just don't have a clear-cut number one.
Well, Andy Dalton was going to start, so
yeah, that's what I was going to say. So now they do say that Andy Dalton's going to start. Everyone knows when you draft a quarterback, he is, especially in the first round, he's going to get his touches. It might not be this season. If Andy Dalton exceeds expectations, they're going to sit Fields for a year. Let him kind of not, you don't. A lot of teams don't like to necessarily throw their rookie QBs straight out into the wolves necessarily. They like to give them a year or two. To a less extreme edition, but kind of what Green Bay did with Aaron Rodgers, for example. They let him sit behind Brett Favre for a couple years. Now, I'm not calling Andy Dalton Brett Favre. I don't think I don't even think that's a conversation worth having.
Ocho Cinco with
red hair like
he's got red hair.
Chicago Bears always worry me. They've never had a franchise quarterback. They've never really had a franchise quarterback consistently. They've had maybe a quarterback who can play a couple of years that's worthy of maybe Pro Bowl status, but I can't think of the last time I've thought of a Bears franchise quarterback. They're a team that takes Kyle Orton or whoever it was that started that year all the way to the Super Bowl against the Colts. They're always a defensive-minded team first. And, they do have the weapons in Allen Robinson, but with Andy Dalton throwing, you saw the dip in production from Dak to Andy Dalton last year. And so that's just kind of my worry. Last thing I'll say, really, though, Montgomery, he carried about the same amount this year as last year, 5 more carries 2020 than he did in 2019, his rookie season. But he caught the ball more than twice as much. He caught it 54 times compared to 25 times. So I think he is getting a little bit more in the passing game. I know Tyreek was a little bit injured last year, so that did help a little bit.
His ACL was gone.
Yeah, well,
His ACL was gone.
but that's something that you really do have to take into. Are they going to trust Tyreek Cohen with
I
a
don't think so.
coming back from an ACL injury as a catching running back?
Yeah, I think it's Montgomery's field. If you take what they say at camp seriously.
Well,
but-
100%. But I mean, he's going to definitely take some touches
but
away.
you can have,
At least
We'll
in the
see.
passing game. In the passing game.
all right. Well, that's good. All right, let's move on to the Lions. And JD, how about you start us off with the Lions?
Oh boy,
You love golf so much, so let's.
Yeah.
Trade Goff for Darnold.
Let's hear how great Goff is. I mean, it starts with Goff, ends with Goff. I mean, if he can somehow prove that he is better than what he kind of was on the Rams, or what people at the end thought he was on the Rams, you can look at maybe like a couple players having decent seasons. But I mean, besides their running back of DeAndre Swift, who I think is probably still going to be their number one. I know they have Jamal Williams, but I mean, DeAndre Swift could be potentially good. We'll see. Tyrell Williams is their number one wide receiver for Goff. I don't think he's this as good of an option as what he had on the Rams, but we'll see. It's very, very difficult. That this is the one team I would shy away from taking anyone, but year in, year out, I always shy away from taking anyone on the Lions. I just don't trust the Lions.
Yeah, same with me, man. It's just blah. Like, it's the Lions, man. You know, I think you can get away with getting Swift, but I mean, there's also, it's the same thing when you had Aaron Jones with, you know, Jamal Williams. Is he's going to be taking when they need someone to run up the middle, it's going to be Jamal Williams. So I think that's that. I think I'd only take Hawkinson, T.J. Hawkinson. I think he's going to be someone that Goff relies on heavily. I think that's going to be someone that you definitely want if you're looking for a tight end, if you don't have the big three. But I think also someone else to consider is Amon St. Brown, JD's guy. He's someone that they're really high on. I think that he's definitely, with the opportunities there for him. So he's definitely going to get some touches. Someone that I would maybe consider drafting late rounds.
Yeah. I mean, I'll say one thing. As an SC boy, I mean, I would always pick up Amon-Ra St. Brown. Just because if you ever watch any of the games, he was a sure-handed receiver at SC. You threw the ball in his directions, and he was catching it. He's a good route runner, but he doesn't have the speed. And so that's kind of what scares me in the NFL. Route runners can be good, but speed kills. And he's not even considered, I don't think, in their top three wide receivers. And that's what kind of scares me. Only other thing I'll say is they kind of reinforced the offensive line, which has been Stafford's biggest problem for years there when they picked up Sewell from Oregon.
That was the best pick for me.
Yeah. That was.
Yeah, he
very fortunate that he fell to them. Dumb Bengals.
Very, very fortunate.
Yeah, the Bengals are dumb. Sorry, Bengals fans. That that was dumb. Like they know. Like it's like we need line. Mixon. Like defender freaking burrowed in his knee. We'll talk about that.
Let's go protect our number one, our first pick.
Who's already hurt?
Who just tore his ACL. Yeah. Let's get a receiver. Another wide receiver.
Yeah.
I would have, defense maybe.
Ryan Finley will do a good job throwing to Jamar Chase after Burrow's hurt.
After Burrow.
Someone said that on Twitter. I can't take full credit for that. But yeah, for me, it's DeAndre Swift and Hawkinson. I draft either of those guys. I think they'll both be solid. DeAndre Swift will be an RB2 for you. He has RB1 upside, but he'll be an RB2, I think, just because of how this will work out. I think he'll get the passes. I think that their offense might struggle to move, which might hurt the run game, but that'll help them passing because DeAndre Swift got a lot of pass catching last year. So that might keep Jamal Williams out and DeAndre Swift in because he does good with the pass catching. So I'd keep it. Hawkinson's going to get fed as a tight end. I picked him last year. He got fed last year when they had some receivers. Now they don't really have anything, and Hawkinson's just got good hands in that red.
Galladay, you mean? Nope.
What'd I say?
Galladay? Nope.
Yeah, Galladay's gone. He was hurt. They had Marvin Jones. That's it, right? So
all they had last year was
who did well?
Hawkinson.
Yeah, that's for true.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think they're even worse since they lost Marvin Jones too. So like, we can't discount Marvin Jones. Like he was relevant when Galladay was out.
But yeah, so that's all I'd grab. Goff, I wouldn't want. Maybe because they're losing, so you might stream them. But we'll talk about that on the weekly basis. But but these guys don't like to stream. I'm a streaming type of guy. But
yeah, when you have Josh Allen, you don't need.
Yeah,
to
you don't. And Kyler Murray.
When you're Kyler Murray, I mean,
I bet.
Yeah, we don't like to
I
stream.
ended up getting my hands on the MVP Rodgers, and then I was okay after that. I didn't need to stream, but before that I was streaming Gardner Minshew. He failed me, but where are you now? No, but so Nick, is there any final thoughts on the Lions? I think we're good. I think we covered it, right?
I think we covered
so let's move on here to Nick. You want to take the Packers too?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, the Packers are. I was definitely before Aaron Rodgers. I was like, I don't want to touch that team. But I think with Aaron Rodgers, he just changes the whole dynamic of the team. He's going to be one, giving Aaron Jones the touches in the passing game. Obviously feeding, feeding those receivers like Devontae Adams and stuff like that. Randall Cobb's that's someone that they brought in that obviously Aaron really liked. So I think everyone in that team, if Aaron Rodgers is there, they're going to be a force to be reckoned with, offensive force. I mean, what can I say? Aaron Jones is going to be a beast again this year. Aaron Rodgers is going to be a beast again this year. He's going to be on a prove it deal. I don't know if you guys keep tabs on his Instagram, but him and Devontae Adams both posted Last Dance, and he's playing with the chip on his shoulder, like I'm going to go lights out here and just burn the Packers front office and go somewhere else. I think he's going to do. So I think he's just going to torch him. I think Devontae Adams, same thing. He's going to just be lights out again. But they're also a team that I just want to get some. I want a part of that offense. Whether that be Devontae Adams, whether that be maybe a flex play with Randall Cobb, depending on who they play. If they play like the Houston Texans,
that broken team.
But I think, yeah, you're right, and definitely want a part of them.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to their team, they're loaded on offense. I mean, like Nick's kind of saying, I think Aaron Rodgers is going to play with a chip on his shoulder. I think he's going to go out there and he's going to prove to Green Bay how horrible they're really missing out by making him basically, at this point, quit the team. I mean, I don't think there's anyone in their right mind at this point who doesn't think that this is his last year at the Green Bay Packers. As weird as that is to think, he's probably going to be moving on to, I mean, it looks like he really likes the Broncos. It could be there, but either way, I think this is kind of the season where he's just going to kind of shove it in the Packers' face by playing so well. And he's going to have another MVP type season. I mean, I think he's honestly going to produce even better than he did last year. He just really has an extra chip on his shoulder. They drafted Jordan Love a couple of years back, and I'm sure instead of, they were in the NFC Championship, and instead of, giving him an extra weapon or at least buffering up their defense, they go and get a quarterback who, I mean...
Disrespect.
Yeah,
they don't need it.
Yeah, they didn't need him, and they didn't need him for a couple of years. I mean, they could have waited till this next year at least to have drafted a quarterback, and even then, they still could have extended Aaron Rodgers' deal. So, I mean, in an age where you see Tom Brady's going to play to 43, 44, quarterbacks can play longer than most other positions. So, I think
though. Sorry to cut you off. To be fair, though, if you look back at it, they did the same thing with Brett Favre, with Aaron Rodgers. So he was drafted when they probably shouldn't have drafted him. Fell to them. So it may be a bad decision right now. We'll see what Jordan Love can do when he gets.
I disagree.
But to the opposite side, I don't think when they drafted Aaron Rodgers, Brett Favre was already questionably leaving. There was already questions that he was trying to retire. There's been no questions with Aaron Rodgers trying to retire. I mean, I think Brett Favre retired 2 or 3 times before he finally retired.
I was going to say, that was a throwback, saying Brett Favre going to retire, then change his mind and come back.
Yeah. Aaron Rodgers has never been like that to that extent. And so it could work out for them. I don't think Jordan Love is the same caliber as an Aaron Rodgers was coming out of college. But who knows? Maybe Aaron Rodgers is able to take him under his wings enough to kind of teach him a couple years, and then he'll take over the reins. That's out of the anyways, that's like a next year decision on Jordan Love. Aaron Rodgers has another Aaron in the backfield, and Aaron Jones, and that guy I think is gonna be a beast this year. He was. We all made fun of our friend last year who actually drafted him in the first round because we were thinking. Yeah, because we were thinking he should have dropped to the second round, which is where he was usually being taken. And he basically, through the first couple games of last season, proved us wrong with that decision. I mean, he ended up being amazing last year, especially through the first couple games. He had a couple injuries, I believe. Yeah. But, I mean, the first couple games, he's really good. And if he can stay healthy, he's a really great running back. I mean, he's good in all facets of the game. He can run the ball. He can catch the ball. And then you have a Devontae Adams. Devontae Adams is probably the best wide receiver in the league right now, as far as just the ability he has. But, yeah.
All right, so for me, to throw my hat in the ring really quickly on the Aaron Rodgers thing is I believe that they drafted Jordan Love. This is even Colin Cowherd. I've even heard him talk about it, and I wholeheartedly agree. If Jordan Love is as good as they drafted him to be, he'd be playing right now. They would have traded Aaron Rodgers for 3 first-round draft picks. But he's not. Obviously, he's not good. And they're like, no, we need to keep Aaron because he's just not. Supposedly, the news is he's just not as good as they thought he'd be. So that's all I have to say about that. I wholeheartedly disagree that Aaron Rodgers can have a better year than last year. Or he broke records in touchdowns. He can't throw that's a number you can't keep. He's getting older. I just don't think that year was a revelation. I think that's just not going to happen again. I personally, that's how I believe. I think he'll be a solid choice, but I think he's overrated a little bit right now for where he's going.
Ooh,
overrated for
that's a hot
from
take.
A guy who owned him. I think he's overrated for fantasy purposes. I think he'll be a solid. There'll be a force to be reckoned with in the season, but for fantasy, I think he won't be as good as he was last year. I don't think he'll be close to as good as he was last year. I hope he is. But that being said, though, I also think Devontae Adams is the best wide receiver you can draft. In Yahoo leagues, he's going 19th or something. That will change quickly. So if your draft's coming up soon, I'd pick him if you can because he's better. I think he's the number 1 wide receiver to draft. He's proved it last year. He is and also a little stat about him, he gets the most targets out of any receiver when they're in the red zone. He's targeted in that red zone. Somebody we forgot to mention is Robert Tonyan. That guy is going to get his targets too. Tonyan is a tight end. I think he's going really low, and he's someone to watch because now that Rodgers is back, Tonyan will get targets and get fed like he did last year. Tonyan is someone to watch.
Yep.
What I have to say about Aaron Jones is Aaron Jones has top 5 potential, but there's someone by the name of A.J. Dillon in the background who probably will take that away from him. I think they drafted A.J. Dillon, I think, in the second round 2 years ago. So he will get touches. That's what they want to do. They want to keep him fresh. If the Packers blow someone out, A.J. Dillon's going in. Why would they want to risk Aaron Jones? So that's something to keep an eye on. He might not get that upside, but he has that top 5 running back upside. So yeah. So that's kind of
Quadatron.
Yeah, so that's all I have to kind of cover with them. Everyone all those 4 guys I mentioned, the running back, wide receiver, tight end, quarterback, I'd draft them. And then I'd even maybe draft A.J. Dillon if you have Aaron Jones, just in case Aaron Jones gets hurt, because he sometimes does. So that's something to be.
A.J. Dillon just scares me because they had the ability to make him their full-time starter and let Aaron Jones bounce, and they gave Aaron Jones a huge contract. Yeah. So if, like you were saying with Jordan Love, it feels like the same thing with A.J. Dillon. It feels like they don't have the belief in him to be that number 1 running back. I don't think he can catch,
but we saw him run, and he rushed really well last year. In the last few games, he rushed for a lot of yards. So, but I think with the catching though, which they like, is where he probably struggles at. But yeah, so all right, let's move on to the final team of our long discussion today. But it's all right. I hope you guys are hanging with us. But it's a good talk. We're going to talk about the Vikings, and I'll start us off. I planned this accordingly because the Vikings are a team I love because I happen to be in a league where I get to keep both Dalvin Cook and Justin Jefferson. And I'll start off with Dalvin. Draft him. He's an amazing running back. He has the downside of injuries. He didn't get hurt much at all last year, so people were kind of proving wrong. He's he's going to get injured. He got injured for a week or 2, I believe. So, but that being said, if you draft Dalvin Cook, draft Alexander Madison. Draft him because he's a solid running back. If Dalvin goes down, you can breathe. You can breathe if he goes down. So that's just take that off you. So you draft him. When you have that second pick, draft Dalvin Cook. And then when you have a later round pick and you see Alexander Madison coming up,
grab him for one of your late bench picks. Just put him on there, okay? Justin Jefferson, I think he's getting overrated in drafts, though. Second round? It's high.
He is. He's going way too high.
He's going way too high.
He's going above DK Metcalf in drafts.
No.
Are you kidding me?
No. He's not. He's definitely not that. He's a great route runner, great receiver, but he's not that. He has a man by the name of Adam Thielen right next to him. They're a 1-2 punch too, and Adam Thielen's getting drafted way low. He has a great value right now in drafts. Draft Adam Thielen because he's that low. He's going to be your wide receiver 2 easily. He'll be your wide receiver 2. He got so many touchdowns. Will he get as many touchdowns as he got last year? Probably not. But he's still Adam Thielen. He's still solid, and he'll still get it targeted. Justin Jefferson, draft him, but he's going way too high. So I don't think I would draft Justin Jefferson being like, he's my bona fide high-end wide receiver 1. I'd say he's a wide receiver 1 maybe, but like maybe low-end too. Like I don't think he's high-end. Like DK Metcalf should be picked for it. Yeah. There's a lot of receivers that I pick before him. That being said, he will be a great solid receiver, but he's not going to be that solid of a receiver. I think we need to talk about their tight end, Irv Smith Jr. I think he's going to be a good tight end to pick. I think people are forgetting about him. He'll get his targets. He's an athletic tight end who will get targeted in the red zone and get you those points. Because that's what a tight end's all about at the end of the day is their touchdowns. Every other position, you can kind of like, no, I'm not going to worry too much about the touchdowns. Tight ends is about the touchdowns where they get those targets in the red zone. So that's kind of like I cover them well. Kirk Cousins, he's a streaming quarterback. That's the best. I wouldn't pick him. I'd leave him in the way. Unless you're a 12-team league maybe, but like other than that, I wouldn't pick him. But yeah, so Dalvin Cook draft him, Justin Jefferson draft him. Thielen going really low. And that guy, I think last year, I want to say, JD, you got him probably in like the 3rd or 4th round. He was going 3rd or 4th round. Thielen. You got him pretty early.
I think 4th, yeah.
And then now he's going in like the 6th or something, like way down there. And I'm like, why is Thielen that low? So he's going to be a great value for your pick. So yeah, the Vikings are a great team to have. So having a piece of that offense is a good team, especially Dalvin.
Yeah, just to add to what Jimmy says, I'm not going to touch on all the players. I think he nailed nailed it in the head with his analysis on them. But I do think you do want to be strategic with what teams you pick, and Vikings are one of those teams that you want because they have a horrible defense, and that means a lot of opportunity for your fantasy players. That's not something that everyone thinks about. You want teams that have horrible defenses so that way they can try to make a comeback. But yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly. Justin Jefferson should not be drafted above DK Metcalf. Period.
Maybe 3rd round. I don't even think in the 2nd round.
Yes, and no disrespect to
great.
Justin Jefferson,
3rd round's a great player.
But if you're disrespecting DK in the process of disrespecting, Justin Jefferson, so.
So, JD, what are your quick thoughts on the Vikings, if you have any?
Yeah, so, you guys kind of touched on it. Cousins, I'll start with him. I think he is a good quarterback. I've had this discussion with Nick a couple times, but
I'm anti-Cousins.
I think he's a good quarterback. I don't think he's a great quarterback, but I think he's a good quarterback. And I think the biggest mistake the Washington Redskins / Washington football team now, but when he was with them, the Washington Redskins did was letting him go. Believe it or not, last year he had 35 touchdown passes. He was a top 10 quarterback. He's sneaky. He really doesn't look or seem like he's that great of a quarterback. But year in, year out, he's putting up numbers that make you think, wow, like he's actually decent. As funny as it is. And like you guys all said, he has the weapons. He has a Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen. Like you said, there's probably arguably one of the better 1-2 punches. They could be up there with the best wide receiver duo in the league right now. And then you have a Dalvin Cook in the backfield to really give him that extra passing running back / someone who can carry the ball on some possessions. They scored as a team 55 touchdowns last year. Between running and throwing. There's a lot of points, like you guys are saying, that's going to be tossed up between all of them. I don't know. I agree with Jimmy and probably a little bit of what Nick's saying, but I definitely do think that Adam Thielen is someone who you would keep an eye out for. I mean, I didn't ever feel bad drafting him last year when I drafted him. I felt like he was someone who, as long as he didn't get COVID, because he got it for 1 week, he was someone who would randomly catch one 60-yard pass or would randomly bring in 1 or 2 touchdown passes every single time. He was just a consistent someone who I could always go to in the passing game when I needed a wide receiver. He was consistently starting as my number 2 wide receiver on my team. He's just a consistent player. I would definitely take Jefferson, but like you guys are saying, I don't think I'd take him over a Metcalf either. And then last but not least, Dalvin Cook is, I mean, Jimmy's so lucky to have him on his team. That's all I'll say. I wish I could have had him fall to me, but he is someone that if he can stay healthy,
he's a stud.
It's gonna be straight up just a stud.
Real quick question: Calvin Ridley or Justin Jefferson this year?
Calvin Ridley.
JD.
Over Justin Jefferson, I would say Justin Jefferson.
I'd say Calvin Ridley.
Yeah, I think he's gonna get more points. He's just Thielen is gonna take points away from Justin Jefferson. It happened last year, so I think it'll happen again this year.
I feel like with Justin Jefferson though, he because he has a Thielen or a Dalvin Cook on his team, it's going to take away some of the defensive ability to kind of focus on that one wide receiver, and I think it's going to leave him a little bit more on one-on-one opportunities compared to they're going to try and do a lot more coverage over Calvin Ridley, do like some type of safety over the top so he can't run deep, and then linebacker through the middle so he can't do slants as much. And they can't really do that with this Vikings team.
All right, before we close out today, what's one guy you're watching from this division? What's one guy, if you can take one, have one guy to watch, just like who's on the radar, you know? So, JD, you want to start us off?
I'll go first.
Go ahead.
No, you go first.
I was going to say, for me, it's Darnell Mooney.
Oh, interesting.
Darnell Mooney is one of those people that just flies under the radar because he had a horrible quarterback last year. They couldn't hit him in stride. I know there's a lot of on Twitter, there's a lot of people saying like Jalen Ramsey's father, but he did burn Jalen Ramsey. And he's fast. He's someone that a lot of people, he's going to fly under the radar. But I think he's one of those people that can take a big step forward and is going to be when Justin Fields hops into place, because we know it's inevitable. He's going to be taking over for the Red Lightning. So I think that he's definitely going to be that guy that's going to be their solid number 2, and he's going to be taking a step forward this year.
All right, JD.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably going to be, in my opinion, Adam Thielen. I mean, just that 1-2 punch, and with Justin Jefferson really making that step last year, it really, if anything's going to help him, he's going to be able to kind of still get those possessions in the red zone, still get those catches. I don't think he had a bad season last year to warrant kind of the drop in the fantasy that he really took. And so I would really like to watch Thielen and see how he does this season.
Yeah, JD, once again, we were on the same page because I was going to say Thielen, but who I will say instead is Hawkinson. I think he's going probably like 5th, 6th round. I think he has an opportunity to be at the top of the tight end pool. And there's only a few of those guys you can count on. I think he'll be targeted so much in every drive that he's just someone to watch out for. All right, well, that does it for us today. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time on the Fantasy Football Bros. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Follow us on all social media platforms that we are on, and we'll see you guys next time. Thank you.
Thanks for watching the Fantasy Football Bros podcast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. See you next time.